There is a morning that teaches you everything you need to know about food storage, and it does not involve a single piece of tactical gear. It is the morning after the power went out. You are standing in your kitchen. The refrigerator is quiet. The freezer is ticking toward a slow thaw. And you are opening the pantry door to take inventory of what you actually have, not what you meant to buy. Not what you bookmarked on some website. What is actually on the shelf right now at 7 in the morning, with the grid down and the roads getting worse. That moment is the audit, and most households fail it. FEMA's own National Household Survey in 2022 found that only 51% of American households had supplies to sustain themselves for 3 days without outside assistance. 3 days. That is the federal government's minimum recommendation, published on ready.gov since 2003, and half the country has not met it. Not because they cannot afford it, not because the knowledge is hidden, because somewhere along the way, keeping a stocked pantry stopped being a normal part of running a household and became something with a label, a marketing budget, and a price tag that would have made your grandmother laugh out loud. Here is what this is about. A 30-day emergency food supply, assembled from a standard grocery store for roughly $120 to $150. No freeze-dried meals, no survival buckets, no military rations, no 25-year shelf life you will never test. Just food, the kind you actually eat, the kind your family will actually recognize on a plate. And before we go any further, understand this. The fact that you are thinking about this at all does not make you paranoid. It makes you the person in the household who looked at the weather forecast, looked at the pantry, and decided to close the gap. That used to be called running a home. So let us start with what adequate actually means, because the number matters. The USDA dietary guidelines set a moderately active adult at roughly 2,000 to 2,600 calories per day. In a sheltering-in-place scenario, where you are not running marathons, but you are not lying in bed either, 2,000 calories a day keeps you fed, functional, and clear-headed. Over 30 days, that is 60,000 calories. That is your target, not a vague feeling of fullness. A number. Everything else flows from it. Now here is where the prepper industry hopes you stop thinking. A commercial freeze-dried 30-day supply runs $400 to $800 at retail. Some run more. Consumer Reports tested several of these kits in 2020 and found that some marketed as a full month supply delivered as few as 1,200 calories per day. That is not a 30-day food supply. That is a 30-day diet you did not sign up for, in a cardboard box with a tactical font on it. The 25-year shelf life printed on those buckets is technically accurate. Freeze-dried food in sealed cans does retain caloric value for decades under ideal conditions. But here is what that number actually is. It is a solution engineered for a problem that does not exist at the household level. The average major disaster disruption in this country lasts 3 to 14 days. Even Hurricane Katrina's most severe impact zones had food distribution restored within a month. You are not storing food for the year 2049. You are storing food for the ice storm, the hurricane, the supply disruption, the job loss, the month that gets hard. You need 6 months of shelf life, not 25 years. And the difference in cost between those two timelines is $400 that stays in your pocket. Your grandmother did not call it prepping. She called it a pantry. She kept 8 to 12 weeks of staples on hand, because that is what a household did after the Depression taught an entire generation what an empty shelf felt like. She rotated through it. She cooked from it on Tuesday and replaced what she used on Friday. Nothing sat for years. Nothing required a manual to rehydrate. And if the weather turned bad for a week, she barely noticed, because the pantry was not a project. It was how the kitchen worked. That is what we are rebuilding here. Not a bunker, a pantry. The caloric foundation is rice and dried beans, and there is a reason this combination has fed civilizations for thousands of years. White rice, and it must be white, not brown, because brown rice contains oils in the bran layer that go rancid within 6 to 12 months. White rice stores 4 to 5 years in its original packaging at room temperature. 1 pound of long-grain white rice gives you approximately 1,655 calories. At roughly $1 a pound, that is about 6 cents per 100 calories. It is the cheapest calorie on the grocery shelf. 20 pounds of white rice gives you approximately 33,000 calories. That is 55% of your 30-day target. Cost, $16 to $24. Now add 10 pounds of mixed dried beans. Pintos, black beans, lentils. Vary it for your own sanity. 1 pound of dried pinto beans provides roughly 1,540 calories and 99 grams of protein. Rice is low in lysine but has methionine. Beans are low in methionine but loaded with lysine. Together, they form a complete protein, every essential amino acid in adequate proportion. This is not a nutritional hack. This is the dietary foundation of half the world's cuisines. It was old knowledge when the Aztecs were building temples. 10 pounds of mixed dried beans gives you another 15,400 calories and nearly 1,000 grams of protein. Cost, $12 to $18. So far, you have spent roughly $30 to $40 and covered almost 80% of your caloric needs for a month. No one in a tactical vest told you about this. No one needed to. But rice and beans alone will wear you down psychologically, and that matters more than most people realize. Nutritional researchers call it food fatigue, a documented phenomenon in emergency feeding where people begin refusing adequate food simply because they cannot face the same meal again. Variety is not luxury. It is a practical requirement for a plan that actually works past day 5. This is where canned proteins earn their place. 15 cans of tuna, 5-ounce cans, give you roughly 2,500 calories and a significant protein boost. 8 cans of canned chicken add another 2,800 calories. A few cans of chili, beef stew, and that 12-ounce can of canned luncheon meat your grandfather ate without apology in 1955 because Hormel shipped 150 million pounds of it to Allied troops during the Second World War. And nobody called it survival food. They called it Tuesday. 1 can of that luncheon meat delivers 1,080 calories. It is one of the most calorically dense, shelf-stable proteins available in a standard grocery store. Total canned protein cost, roughly $45 to $60. You are now sitting on enough food to get through the month. But we are not done, because calories without fat leave you hungry 2 hours later. And hunger, in an emergency, makes people make bad decisions. This is the part almost nobody talks about. Cooking oil. A 48-ounce bottle of vegetable oil provides approximately 8,640 calories. At $4 to $6 a bottle, it matches rice as the cheapest calorie source in the store, roughly 5 to 7 cents per 100 calories. 2 tablespoons stirred into a pot of rice adds 480 calories and changes the meal from something you endure to something that actually satisfies. In a genuine caloric emergency, a bottle of oil is worth more than most of the gear in a $200 bug-out bag. Nobody puts cooking oil on a preparedness list because it does not look dramatic. It does not photograph well for a thumbnail. It just works. 4 jars of peanut butter give you another 10,640 calories, 112 grams of protein per jar, and the single best no-cook calorie source in this entire plan. Peanut butter on a spoon requires no water, no heat, no preparation. It is what you eat at 2 in the morning when the power is still out and you need something that holds. Unopened, it lasts 1 to 2 years at room temperature. Cost: $12 to $18. Make sure it is the regular kind, not the natural type with the oil separation. The natural version has a shorter shelf life and belongs in a different conversation. For breakfast, 1 large box of instant oatmeal, 42 packets, provides about 4,200 calories, and the fiber that rice alone will not supply. A package of powdered non-fat milk adds another 2,500 calories and calcium your bones will thank you for. Together, $14 to $18. Honey deserves its own moment. A 32-ounce bottle provides roughly 2,760 calories and has a shelf life that is, by any practical measure, infinite. Archaeologists found honey in Egyptian tombs roughly 3,000 years old. It was still edible. The low moisture content, the acidic pH, the natural hydrogen peroxide. Honey simply does not support bacterial growth. At $7 to $10 a bottle, it is your quick energy source, your sweetener for oatmeal, and the one item on this shelf that your great-grandchildren could theoretically open. Now, there is a claim floating around the internet that grocery store honey works as wound care. This needs a correction, because wrong information in this space can hurt people. Medical-grade honey, specifically Manuka honey, with a standardized rating, does have FDA-cleared wound care applications backed by peer-reviewed research, including a 2015 Cochrane systematic review. But the bear-shaped squeeze bottle in your pantry is not sterile, not standardized, and is not a substitute for clean water and proper first aid. Honey's value in your emergency supply is as food. Leave the wound care to actual medical supplies and actual medical knowledge. Round out the supply with 4 pounds of dried pasta, a bag of sugar, 10 cans of mixed vegetables, 5 cans of fruit, salt, bouillon, and a container of instant coffee. The coffee has 0 caloric value and enormous psychological value. If you have been through even a 2-day outage, you understand that completely. One more item, and this one is an honest acknowledgement of what a shelf-stable diet cannot do. A bottle of daily multivitamins. 150 count, $5 to $8, covers you for 5 months. A 30-day diet of canned and dried food will leave you short on vitamins A, C, D, and E, and several minerals. A multivitamin does not fully replace fresh food. It closes the worst gaps. That is honest. And honest is what keeps people alive. Total cost for all of this, at 2024 national average pricing with store brands, $120 to $150, less if you have a warehouse club membership. Total calories, roughly 102,000, which works out to about 3,400 per day. That surplus is intentional. It gives you room if a second person needs to share, if the weather turns cold and your body burns hotter, or if you want to build a leaner supply closer to the $120 floor. So what does this look like in practice? Not in a box in the garage you forget about for 8 years. In practice. The system that makes this work is 4 words long. Eat what you store. The Utah State University Extension Program has been teaching this for decades. Every item on this list is food your household would eat on a normal week. When you make dinner on a Tuesday night, pull the rice from the emergency shelf, not from the regular cabinet. When you replace it at the grocery store that weekend, the new bag goes to the back. The oldest item always comes forward. First in, first out. Your grandmother had a name for this too. She called it using things up. Under this rotation, the oldest item on your emergency shelf is typically 3 to 6 months old. Every item on this list is well within its quality window at that age. Nothing expires. Nothing gets forgotten. And the day you actually need the supply, everything on it is food you ate last month. This is the fundamental difference between a pantry system and a freeze-dried bucket. The bucket is a purchase. You buy it, you put it in a closet, you move it to 3 houses, and you never open it. The pantry is a practice. It feeds you on the ordinary days and protects you on the hard ones. Only one of those actually gets tested before the emergency arrives. But here is the thing most food storage conversations skip, and skipping it can kill you. Water. You can survive 30 days without food. Your body has reserves. It will not be pleasant, but it is survivable. You cannot survive 5 days without water. FEMA recommends 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and basic sanitation. For 30 days, that is 30 gallons, roughly 250 pounds of water, which is a real storage challenge. A practical middle ground is to store 7 to 14 days' worth in food-grade containers and invest $20 to $30 in a gravity-fed water filter rated for available water sources. Your food supply is only as useful as your water supply. Anyone who spent $600 on a food bucket and $0 on water solved the problem backwards. And while we are being honest about what this plan does not do, let us finish the list. This is a one-person supply. A family of 4 needs 4 times the quantity, and the budget scales accordingly. If you have dietary restrictions, gluten-free, nut allergies, dairy-free, the substitutions are straightforward, but they change the math. If you have a medical condition that requires specific nutrition, particularly diabetes or kidney disease, talk to your doctor about emergency food planning before you build a generic shelf. And this supply requires cooking. Dried beans need water and heat. Lentils cook in 20 to 30 minutes. Pintos and black beans need an hour or 2. In a power outage, that means a camp stove or a butane burner, used outdoors or in a well-ventilated space, because carbon monoxide from indoor combustion cooking is one of the leading causes of death after disasters. The CDC publishes guidance on this, and it is not optional reading. If you cannot cook, lean heavier on the canned goods and peanut butter, which require nothing but a manual can opener that works. There is a version of this conversation, you have heard it, where someone stands in front of a camera and tells you that the grid is going down any day, that civilization is 12 meals from collapse, that you need a bunker and a plan and a $100,000 setup to survive what is coming. That version sells fear. It sells gear. It sells a fantasy where preparedness is an identity, and the more anxious you are, the more prepared you must be. That is not what this is. This is a bag of rice, a bag of beans, a case of canned tuna, and a jar of peanut butter. This is a grocery run on Saturday morning that costs less than a decent pair of boots. This is what FEMA, the Red Cross, and every university extension program in the country have been quietly recommending for decades. Civic preparedness, household management, the simple act of looking at your pantry and closing the gap between what is there and what would carry you through 3 hard weeks. The most important preparedness investment you can make is not expensive, and it is not dramatic. It is a shelf in your kitchen, stocked with food you recognize, rotated through meals you actually eat, organized so the oldest item comes forward, and maintained the same way your grandmother maintained hers. Not because the world was ending, but because that is how a capable household works. This weekend, if you want to start, you do not need to build the whole supply. You need 3 things: a 20-pound bag of rice, 10 pounds of beans, and a count. Walk into your kitchen, open the pantry, and count days. Not items, days. How many days could you feed your household from what is on that shelf right now without a trip to the store? That number is your honest starting point. No judgment in it. Just a number and a direction to move. If you grew up in a household where the pantry was always full, where canning jars lined the basement shelves in August, and the freezer held enough to get through a bad month, you already know what this feels like. You are not learning something new. You are picking back up something that got set down. And if you did not grow up that way, you are picking it up for the first time. And it is yours, now. Nobody needs to sell it to you. A bag of rice costs $1.20, and no one has figured out how to make rice sound scary enough to charge you $600 for it. The first thing a full pantry gives you is not food. It is calm. Tell me in the comments what your honest pantry count is right now. How many days could you go? No judgment, just a number and a starting line. And if you want more of this, the plain language version, no fear, no gear pitches, no red thumbnails, subscribe. We are just getting the pantry stocked.